we're going to see more unveilings of more like alien-derived travel tech, so teleportation. I think that's a lot of Pluto and Aquarius. That Saturn-Neptune conjunction can actually reboot the way that we look at international travel. So we might hear that there's travel pods that are being developed. We're also probably going to hear about new technology that's going to be showing us how we can get from point A to point B in a flash. And those innovations in how we're traveling, how we're learning, how we're connecting with Uranus in Gemini. So when I think about Saturn and Neptune, which is going to be our perception of time, our perception of ourselves, of reality, because the conjunction is happening at 0 degrees, it can mean that there is getting ready to be a complete reset on the way that we look at time. I think that if there is going to be something that's going to be going on, we're actually going to see more tension next year with the Saturn-Neptune connection in Aries. I also think that we're going to be seeing something closer to like 2030, that there's going to be some tension going on there.
Ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra JK, ultra. Ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra JK, ultra.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ultra Minds. Today, I am super excited about my guest, who I am a big fan of her videos on YouTube. She is really probably one of the most thorough astrologers on all of YouTube. If you want to learn more, then you need to watch Candace Marie Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. Hi, Candace. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm super excited to ask you things because your videos are so in-depth. I've learned so much from watching your videos, but sometimes you say these things and I'm like, I think she's into some interesting stuff. Sometimes I'm like, I think she might be into aliens. I think she might be into some conspiracies, little things that you say along the way. So I'm excited to ask you more about some collective things happening because a lot of your videos are more geared towards the personal readings. So I'm so excited to be able to ask you about what is coming in these coming years that are going to be changing for the collective.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Definitely a nice break in pace in like the content that I create. Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold, so I'm still trying to kind of get my voice back. I apologize. I'm excited to be here, especially because I think we have a lot of the same interests. I like to drop like little crumbs along the way when I create content. Then I kind of be careful with some of the algorithm. But yeah, I think we're on the same page.
And you know, your predictions are so accurate to just like weirdly specific things. Like one thing that sticks out to me was I was watching your video, maybe it was around New Year's Eve of this past year. And you said like in the early hours of New Year's Day, there's going to be something that happens. And you're like, it's not going to be something like a shooting, but it has that type of similar type of energy. And you said people are going to be like, oh no, if this is how the year starts, we're in for a crazy year. And you're like, it's not, it's going to happen in these early hours. But that's it. It's going to pass. It's not going to keep happening. And when I woke up that next morning from watching that video, I was like, oh my God, Candace is a prophet.
Well, if you know how to kind of like read the stars and like the transits, I mean, there's been so many things that have been bang on, like in the astro community in general. But it's interesting that you mentioned that because it's really an aspect that's been playing out since November of 2024. So we've seen Mars, which is the planet obviously of like conflict and war, going retrograde. It started at the end of 2024 in December. And it's made several oppositions to Pluto, which is obviously the god of death and rebirth and power struggles. So pretty much from November until now, we have seen oppositions between Pluto and Mars. So it's about things that are explosive, stuff that deals with like heat, it deals with fire, conflict. Unfortunately, we saw it materialize in like the fall of last year as like house fires with the opposition between Mars and Cancer and Pluto in Capricorn. And then in the new year, right around New Year's Day, we saw the tragedy that happened in New Orleans with people, you know, kind of getting hit in the crowd and bombings of Tesla trucks and all kinds of stuff. So this week in particular, you know, kind of as we're getting closer to the end of April 2025, it's perfecting. So we're going to see it opposed for the third time. So this whole end of April is like huge for exposure. And I think that the last one is really going off with a bang. So I'm anticipating another big kind of jaw-dropping moment, some kind of explosive events taking place. So the timing of this video is like very kind of like on point.
Oh, wow. So what are some things that you're feeling coming up?
Well, Mars is in Leo right now, so it's definitely about fierce leaders. It's also going to be about people who are taking risks. It can be connected also to individuals because it's going through a fire sign, and it's making an opposition to Pluto and Aquarius. So it still takes on this theme of individuals versus the collective. I've seen it materialize as individuals who are kind of like against some of the more Pluto and Aquarius futuristic, like technocrat type of themes. And I definitely feel like we're going to see more of that. It's really cool to see the opposition play out as we're coming into May, because it's also baked into the new moon in Taurus. So in astrology, we have aspects. We look at how the planets relate to each other, and that's how astrologers determine whether or not it's like a friendly energy, if it's challenging. And we're going to see throughout like the next week, the sun come into Taurus, which is about money. It's about banking. It's about the earth, the planet. And it's squaring Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius. So I think more of the explosive events are going to be actually revolving around geoengineering. I think it's also going to be around some shocks and surprises with the stock market. And I think we are going to see also just people who are going to be feeling that they're really on edge, because oppositions create tension. It's like seeing two planets kind of standing like in a boxing ring, challenging each other. So I think it's going to be a lot of people having conflict over the future of how we're navigating banking, what's going on revolving around exposure, connecting to manipulation of the weather, and how that impacts the planet, as well as agriculture, farmland, us mortals, I guess, down here as well. So I think we're going to see some tensions rise, and the final opposition will materialize, I think, as exposure and the collective becoming aware of how these power struggles that are kind of going on are directly tied to banking. And whether or not collectively we're waking up and realizing that what we have put so much value into, whether it's luxury goods, whether it could be, the banking system in general, fiat money, whatever. And we're all starting to kind of realize like, whoa, like, are we actually safe and secure with the system that we have been kind of functioning within?
Wow. And especially the luxury goods thing we've seen on social media in just the last couple weeks, everything has lost its value, all of the luxury brands. And it's happening, it happens in those luxury items first, but that is just like the canary in the coal mine of other things that are going to be happening related to that. So like, what do you see changing with luxury items, financial stuff, like in that area?
Well, I mean, I think there are some people who have kind of seen through the facade of that for a very long time, right? And like we know that we recognize certain brands, people are going to tie that as being something that's like valuable, and it's just kind of like a status item, right? Whether it's a bag, shoes, whatever, cars. But I think that this is also going to impact the opposition between Mars and Pluto. It's going to impact, I think, the stock price of certain luxury brands. And Taurus is what we possess and what we value. So our values are changing. This is why we're also seeing fluctuations with the stock market. Bitcoin's going up. We're seeing gold going up. People are starting to reassess what's actually tangible, what's valuable. I think a lot of the luxury good stuff was actually the Venus retrograde, because Venus deals with luxury items, things that are beautiful. It went retrograde, which basically means that there was a grand reveal, especially in the sign of Pisces. And Pisces deals with global trade. So things that we're buying from foreign lands. So that retrograde actually took place alongside Mercury, which is about exchanging commerce. So when we see retrogrades, there is karmic kind of happenings where we're realizing what has been kind of hidden or withheld. That's why you're seeing TikTok, influencers and people who are in, Asia, China, coming out being like, hey, you're buying these, $80 leggings. P.S. like it costs $4 to make these. And if you want to buy direct, here's the link. Really kind of ripping off, I think, like the top on where at least Western, people have become so utterly obsessed and consumed with, I need to have these expensive things. And so it's happening with all kinds of brands. I think that it was fueled obviously by some of the trade stuff that's been kind of going on with the tariffs as well. If there's going to be, tariffs that are going to be put on products that us, at least as Americans, are purchasing from overseas. So it's interesting to watch that. Mars and Pluto is definitely like these presidents and prime ministers and people who are running countries that are kind of having like almost like a pissing match with each other to see who's actually going to have control over global trade, right? And in the end, maybe this is just my personal perspective, but I think in the end, it can be good for some countries that even though they may come out of it being a little bit more isolated and not really involved in some of the global trade, it can make them stronger and more independent. And they are going to really kind of bring jobs to certain countries that may specialize in certain products. And it can ultimately actually make the market better. It can also make, I think, some countries wealthier, So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it's going to take some time.
So right now we're seeing it with kind of things that don't matter, purses, bags, leggings. But what about the stuff that does matter? Like what's coming up with that? Like technology and things like that. We have AI. We have so much shifting so quickly in front of our eyes right now. So what do you see coming in like now in the coming years?
Well, we're going to see huge innovations in technology and just across the board. I mean, I think a lot of that is connected to, Pluto and Aquarius. Really for the last year and a half, almost 2 years, Pluto has gone in and out of the sign. Aquarius does deal with, power. It's also about innovation. It can be talking about technology, anything connected to frequency, stuff that's in the air. And it's also about connection, how we're all kind of connecting. So Pluto and Aquarius, what it's been doing is it's been kind of showing us previews as it came into the sign of where we're going to see new quantum computing, where there is going to be smaller chips, faster chips, AI, all this ChatGPT stuff that's all been happening since Pluto has ingressed into the sign. And it's really upgrading, I think, the way that, in a way, we process things and how we learn. So it can be positive in that sense. But there's always a darker side to Pluto, right? There is a darker side. It can be definitely about where that's being manipulated. It can also be where it's infringing on our sovereignty. It's infringing on our privacy and how much data and information from some of these apps are actually being harvested and utilized to, in a way, predict how certain groups and collectives are going to behave. So I think that that's going to be colorful. I think we might see that hidden patents that have been kind of going on for some time are going to start to be exposed, and we're going to start to see how there's been technologies that have actually been withheld from the public intentionally because it would free us in many ways.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Stephen Greer's documentary called The Lost Century. And it's kind of this concept, like you're saying, that we already had free technology over 100 years ago, but it's been suppressed, and that it caused all of this damage to the planet, but that now we're actually getting closer to a point where this could happen. Do you see anything like that happening?
I do. And I think a lot of it, I mean, it's interesting. I think it was Elon that posted today on X. He posted a picture that was like of the Wright brothers and then also going to the moon. And he was like, can you believe that this was like within, 100 years of each other? And you see just how much innovation happened. That's if you believe that we went to the moon. I'm so on the fence about that personally, but just how much innovation happened. And so we really kind of noticed, the last 100 years, there's been this weird suppression. How is it that we went to the moon, what was it, the late 60s? How did we go to the moon? And now we've not had any lunar landings, or nothing has really developed or happened since. Like, part of me wonders, has this stuff been suppressed because we're not supposed to know something? Is it being utilized because there's stuff that's going out there in the galaxy? Are we all kind of like, in a way, slaves to the system of, slower vehicles, slower transportation, all of these things, so that way we don't have freedom that, is potentially out there. That's just kind of like my thought, at least.
Right. And exactly. I'm on the same page with the moon. Like, I don't know if we went, is it that we can't go there? Is it that, we're living in some type of hologram and it's not really a place that we can go to? I mean, we definitely know that the video is not real.
I
But
argue this with my husband all the time. Like, I'm always like, it's not real. I'm like, look at the reflection on the shield. I was just like, there are people who claim supposedly to have like been in that. It wasn't even, I don't think it was even a set, maybe, but there are some people that claim they know the location of where they filmed parts of it. I think you saw one of the major astronauts come out and announce or admit to one of the kids who he was like meeting, like, yeah, it wasn't real, you know? So part of me is like, oh my God, is everything fake? Like, what's going on?
So what do you think? I mean, you know, your name is Beyond the Veil. What do you think about this veil kind of being lifted on like truth and these things that we're already seeing it happen. So many things, JFK files, all of these things starting to come out. What do you think about kind of the truth that is coming out in these coming years? And is there astrological connections?
100%. I mean, I think that for me, it's interesting, like that, like the concept and the name of like my business, my company has always been about like looking beyond what seems obvious, right? And being able to kind of see what's going on behind the scenes and the truer meaning of stuff. So it's kind of cool to be hearing in recent years where everybody's kind of talking about, oh, lifting the veil, you know? For me, Pisces is the veil. Pisces represents the 12th sign of the zodiac. So it does talk about other places. It could be about space. It could be about other dimensions. It can also be talking about things that are manipulated or potentially even like, like fiction or fantasy. So over the last 2 years, we've seen Saturn move into this particular sign. So it does represent for the collective Pisces, there is this global awareness, this closing and cleansing that's taking place of what has been fictional, what has been fantasy, and maybe what we have felt, but we have not seen. So now this is wrapping up. We're seeing Saturn actually going into Aries next month. It's going to be there briefly through the summer, which is kind of like a cosmic like slap in the face because it's so different in energy. It's direct in front of you. It's something you can't deny. It's also about taking some kind of action. So we're moving away from we don't know, we're confused, we're drinking, we're drugging in Pisces to Aries. We can't deny that. Now we have to do something about it. Neptune is also in this sign. So we have Neptune that's been dancing in the late degrees of Pisces. It's just recently gone into Aries. And this is going to be talking about, really, we get little glimmers in 2025 about what's coming in 2026. So these two planets coming side by side is very significant because it's a cycle we only see every 36 years where we blend reality and new boundaries revolving around the collective, revolving around time. Also, Aries is about, you know, the human race. And Neptune is going to be about our perception, our beliefs, our spiritual or religious beliefs. And so over the last several months, we have seen these planets nearing the late degrees, which feels like the craziest, you know, and I think Neptune very much is conspiracy. And now we're watching them change signs. So it's very potent to see planets at 28, 29 degrees of Pisces because it's like the final flushing out before we start new. Long story short, now we are approaching the kind of midpoint of 2025 where we're going to start to see all these outer planets changing signs. It's all going to go into fire and air, which is about action. It's about life. It's about intellect, information, learning, technology, and they will all aspect each other before they finally move into those signs in 2026. So if Pisces is what we pray to, because it can be about temples and churches, it can also represent our spiritual beliefs. I see this as a turning point for humanity, where now we are finally needing to have disclosure so we can come to some sort of awareness, we can raise our vibration, and we can actually know the truth. And I think that, okay, we talk about technology, we talk about conspiracies, aliens, all that stuff, but I think that at the core of it is we've been lied to about our history. The human race does not truly know definitively where we come from, why we are here. Did we truly evolve from monkeys? All right, did that happen? And I think we're going to start to learn more about ancient civilizations. I think there's going to be disclosure about some of that. I think there's going to be some major archaeology, type breakthroughs. And I think that it's going to be unreal. We have not seen this particular conjunction at this degree since the Bronze Age. So it is like a new dawn for the human race.
So what do you think about the discovery in Egypt under the Giza Plateau where they're showing this 3D imagery? What do you think about it? And is there astrological stuff going on related to that?
So certainly Saturn deals with old things. Saturn it's about time. It's also about structure. And Saturn being in the sign of Pisces can be talking about anything connected to palaces. It can also be temples, churches, anything ritual, and also spiritual in nature. I think that can be part of why we're seeing this with Saturn and Neptune, things that we did not see. And now we're seeing like what the true meaning is. I'm obsessed. Since I was a little kid, I've been obsessed with like finding the Library of Alexandria, like figuring out what's in there, understanding why that has been something that they claim they can't go and excavate because it's going to, I guess, like implode. But I don't know. I think that there's more than what meets the eye. Pluto deals with what's down deep. So collectively with Pluto and Aquarius, we're all going deep, but I think it's also going to be about what's underneath certain structures. What are we not seeing? That's why you're also seeing lots of people who are discussing and talking about things connected to the Twin Towers, other things that fell, what was going on in the building, whether or not you believe in that. That's going to be the theme. We're going to see collectively where people are wanting to learn more about what's underneath, what's beneath the surface. I think it's probably pretty close to what they are suggesting, but I also know that over the last several years, there's been this kind of like small little disclosures of things that I believe that those who really know the truth have known for a very long time. They're just trying to find ways to kind of introduce it into the collective or into the media to normalize it before we have like this whiplash kind of moment and we start to realize what's really going on. But yeah, I mean, I'm very curious to see what's under there, those pillars, is there books, is there information, are there tablets? Is it an energy, grid that's powering or used to power Egypt? Is it connected to other grids around the world? I mean, I think about all the ancient civilizations. So we think about like, Atlantis and all of these old places and where they used to supposedly use big grids to be able to teleport or connect or communicate, move things. And I'm like, what's going on with the pyramids? Like what's really under there,
It's funny that you mentioned the Library of Alexandria because I do QHHT, which is Dolores Cannon's style of hypnosis. And I've had several clients go to the Library of Alexandria in their past life regressions. But what's interesting is probably like the thing that sticks out the most and just is in my head ever since is the one client said that it still exists in another dimension. So, we kind of have this concept that there's going to be a timeline split coming and some people are going to perceive one timeline and some people are going to perceive one that has more destruction. It said that happened with the Library of Alexandria, that a timeline split happened. Some people perceived it to still exist and it still exists there in another dimension. But in the timeline that we're living in, it's gone and did actually experience destruction. And then it said that one of the other times that this happened was with Atlantis. So there's a parallel timeline that Atlantis never fell, and then a timeline where there was destruction, and that this is the pattern that's happening again. So it's funny that you brought up both of those.
I think that's happening now. I think when you talk to people now, you get such polarity, and it makes sense because there's been a lot of polarity in the astrology, especially since the fall of last year. So some people might perceive it as, well, the polarity is because of what's going on politically. No, the polarity is going on because of awakening is happening. People are getting frustrated, they're getting agitated. And that's also themes connected to Aries. It's like, instead of feeling like a victim in Pisces land, we're going into Aries transits where it's going to be like, okay, you're angry, you're confused, you feel like what you've trusted or what you've believed in isn't real. What are you going to do about it? So rather than fighting each other and seeing this polarity or this contrast, we're needing to recognize that light and dark has to coexist. Both things can kind of happen at the same time. I really feel like part of what's going on is that some of the tension that's brewing, if we can stop fighting each other and if we can look at the situation and go, maybe we're actually kind of like ants in a jar, so we're being shaken up intentionally so we fight, so we don't realize what's actually going on around us. And when you talk to people about their perception, some people are like in la la land where they're like, everything that's happening is amazing. All this disclosure, it's just constant, like, you know? And then other people are angry. They're getting angry and they're denying it, or they're not wanting to admit, or they're wanting to be in a state of fear, or they're not wanting to actually like move forward and ask questions and kind of like practice critical thinking skills. So it's obviously, I think collectively made it very difficult to have any kind of positive or constructive debate, right? Because we've become accustomed to, no, we just fight about it rather than trying to kind of get to the core of what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. And like my perception like of this timeline split that is happening is it's really like the people who want to stay. A lot of times people are thinking like, oh, it's left and right and this and that, like the two opposing sides are the splitting timeline. But actually it's like the two opposing sides are on the same timeline because they're experiencing the same thing. And the other timeline is really the people who are more able to still have like mastery over the two sides, or being able to be more in neutrality, or being able to kind of be more in nuance, is actually the other timeline, versus, you know, the two people that are opposing on the same side are just a mirror to each other doing the same thing with slightly different opinions.
Yep. 100%. I'm really curious to see, because I'm a big fan of Dolores Cannon. I mean, I've watched her videos forever. I've done a past life regression with somebody who she trained with. I think like all that work is so interesting. And I keep asking myself, like, is it happening? Like, are all of these transits, the way that they're lining up, is it going to be that jump? And are we going to, what is it that they call like is it 4D, or is it like the new,
like world? Talks about the 5D, 5D and the new Earth.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see what happens. Like, what is that going to be? And then also like my like theology mind, like the background is like, oh, is this like what we kind of hear about like in the Bible, you know, when we talk about like the end times, like, is it actually this quantum leap that we take forward where we are able to kind of be united and also get to have all these extra abilities? Because I think that's part of this as well, is that think about like humans, like we only use a small percentage of our brain. Like, what else is going on in there? And if we do actually have this ascension, like I think we're supposed to have, we make that quantum leap. What else are we going to have access to? And things that maybe normal people would want to have, whether it's, you know, psychic, intuitive, you know, skills, if it's precognitive abilities, if it's, you know, telekinesis, whatever, you know, are there going to be upgrades that we're going to have that's going to allow all of us to be able to access and tap into those things that we have within us?
And, you know, I feel like a lot of these kind of now older types of spiritual prophecies and things about like New Earth, 5D, I feel like, you know, my perception has shifted over the last several years about it. I did kind of think it was going to be rapture-like, or a shift, or like something that is dramatic. But really, I think that because of where humanity was at, we had to almost have them as a story, as a myth, as something just so it could anchor into people's brains that it was possible. But really, it's happening. It's happening right in front of our eyes every single day. Even just looking back 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it's like, oh my God, that's a different world. That's a different timeline. So the example that I always give people is that, like, it's similar to, like, say, if you get a puppy, it's growing in front of your eyes and you don't see how much it's changing until you look back at a photo and then you're like, oh my God, look how small it was. How did you get so big right in front of my eyes? So I really think that's the way this like quantum shift is happening, that it's like each day, each decision, every time someone's stepping into their purpose, anytime someone's in alignment, it's slowly happening. And I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as it's been prophesized, but for where people were at before, it needed to sound dramatic so that people could believe that it would be.
Right, for sure. Obviously, you're going to get a little bit further with fire and brimstone, you know. I think that's a good example, what you use with the photo, or you're talking about we don't see it. I mean, Aries is the individual. So when I think about Saturn and Neptune, which is going to be our perception of time, our perception of ourselves, of reality, and also this is really a call to action for individuals to step into their purpose and start living it. Start believing that things can actually unfold and shift. And it's going to have huge ripple impacts on organized religion, There's no coincidence that these transits have been happening the last 2 or 3 months and the Pope died. There's no coincidence for that. That is, I think, all very, very much scripted and right on time, because Pisces does represent that connection to religions that are about sacrifice and things that are kind of connected to, being like a martyr type of identity. And we're now leaving that. And we've seen a lot of people leaving, organized religion and church and stuff for quite some time. Those numbers have been dwindling. But at the same time, you're seeing the polar effect, because Pisces is a mutable sign. So you can see both sides kind of coming up at once. Where you're also seeing like a great, I think, process that's unfolding, where there's a lot of people that were returning. They're becoming like religious fanatics because they're also convinced that this is the end times. So new religions will probably start emerging. We're also going to see that some people will be returning to more kind of like archaic types of religious practice. So if we think about, paganism, if we think about also tradition and myth, a lot of people, had little altars and stuff in their home, and they had little deities, and they also had their own little practices. And so we may see a reemergence or resurgence of some traditional forms of worship. So I think that's going to be interesting as well. People's beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, as well as their vision is all going to be redefined with some of the conjunctions happening this and next year.
And so you've brought up time and reality a couple of times. What is going on with that? Is there stuff that is coming up related to time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like super giddy. I guess it was like the last like week or so, the White House releasing information talking about that they have the capability, that the science is there to manipulate time and space. What that means, I don't know. I think that a lot of us are still kind of waiting to kind of hear about the details, but certainly this conjunction that's going to be kind of playing out this and next year can really dig up evidence, I think, relating to time manipulation. And manipulation really is Pisces. It can be a Neptune theme as well. So I think we're going to hear about projects that are kind of leaking or things that have been going on. Can be linking it to like alien-like tech, but it can also be that there is this collective awakening revolving around time. I don't know about you, but really since 2020, time has seemed weird. There's something off. And I know as you get older, you look back and you're like, wow, time moves very quickly, but time seems to be changing in some way. And I wonder if it's connected to that. I also think that because the conjunction is happening at 0 degrees, it can mean that there is getting ready to be a complete reset on the way that we look at time. Now, in a simple way, okay, do we go to, a standard kind of time globally, like a time change, so we're all on the same time? Maybe. But I think this is more going to be about learning that we do have the ability to time travel. It may not be in the way that you see in like Back to the Future, but that we have those capabilities, and maybe that in some way is connected to CERN. Maybe in some way that's connected to also some of the events that have been playing out in recent years, where little changes have happened. What is it? It's I can't think of the name of it.
Mandela effect.
The Mandela effect, right? Like, I don't know about you. I was born in '89, so I'm like a '90s kid, but I think about how, you'll see the fruit of the loom tag, and there's no like harvest basket in it, and people are like, no, this is real. Or I think it was the movie Shazam? Was that
Yeah, Shazam and Kazam.
Right? Yeah, like
one with Shaq and one with Sinbad.
Right. There are distinct things that I'm like, no, that is not real, and I get a kick out of seeing some people. Here's the VHS, here's the original image, here's the product, and I'm like, something is being messed with. Something is definitely being changed. So I think we're going to hear more about that kind of manipulation and how it's being utilized to impact the masses. And then what happens when we have awareness? Then what? I don't know.
So I have my couple of theories of the Mandela effect. Obviously, one is connected to CERN, that it could have been some type of temporal accident. And we know that something like that happened around 2009 when it first went on. Then there's also the concept of like, potentially there's time wars, potentially there's time and space manipulation that is happening either now or in some other time, or potentially aliens doing this time manipulation. The one that I kind of lean most to, and maybe it's because, I'm like optimistic about, where things are going, is I also think that it has to do with like a successful timeline of the universe. So I wonder if like as humanity has been evolving towards a higher timeline, and so with our free will, we're able to go on to any timeline that we would like. But once that becomes a failing timeline and you still have your purpose to be fulfilled, you'll get merged back onto a successful timeline. So that's what's happening at those other timelines were failed timelines that no longer lead to this successful path of the universe that we're aligned with. So, I mean, there's so many different ways that like the time manipulation could happen. It's either happening with technology or is it happening within consciousness?
I think that the human spirit is very resilient. And that's what's so interesting about this whole process is that even though I think there may be, if you believe in the powers that be that are trying to orchestrate some kind of like, you know, technocratic takeover, I think that our intuitions, also human will, and the willingness to want to evolve will supersede anything that's going on. And where my work and my readings differ from other people's, I can tell you what's very likely to happen at any given day, down to like the hour. But we have free will. And also I know that if something is meant to be, whether it's going to take a week or it's going to take 10 years, it will happen. The universe will reroute you. And so that's what's cool to look at astrology from the lens of like transits in a natal chart. So you can see when things are supposed to be unfolding. And some people kind of hit that, you know, when they're 17 and they're a pop star, and other people hit it when they're 45. But if you think that the elites are not using astrology, you're absolutely insane, because everything that they do is all distorted. Everything is flipped. There is symbolism connected to everything. They believe in astrology because they realize and recognize that it is for thousands of years been one of the most accurate ways of divining and forecasting what's coming in the world. So they also know that the planet's relationship to us collectively, those archetypes of those planets will come through. So they will also disclose things. There will be events. There will be things that will happen that will correlate with the astrology, because they have that energy that's working in the favor of that. And they also know enough people are believing in it and following it that there's some kind of connection.
And so do you see kind of a collapse of that type of powers that be coming in the astrology?
Yes, I do. And I think a lot of that is because, you know, you're seeing like the final death rattles right now. It's been going on the last couple of months. It's been happening since I think the Pluto ingress, you know, almost 2 years ago. But the last couple of months with Mars and Leo, which is about kind of the rising up of the human spirit and people getting creative with how they're going to be navigating some of these more kind of Plutonian takeover themes. But I also believe that the reason why this is going to be happening is because all of these ingresses of planets, Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn and Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, they will all be sextiling or trining each other. So they're all working side by side, where Pluto can definitely bring up crisis for the collective. It can also bring through that crisis this phoenix-like moment where we are resilient, we rise up, we do something about it. It's going to take a lot of individual doers and also visionaries with planets in Aries, and those innovations in how we're traveling, how we're learning, how we're connecting with Uranus in Gemini. So yes, I do think that we are going to see that there is going to be a turning point. I think that I would be approaching the next couple of years with excitement, not with fear, because I feel like the last couple of years, there's been this intentional campaign to spread fear, to get people to be afraid to leave their homes, to be talking about things, to be learning, traveling, connecting. And if we can get back to that, if we can focus on being able to share our perspectives and come up with solutions, I feel like the light will win. I think that it just takes a little bit of like light to illuminate the dark.
So what do you see for travel? Is there new types of travel coming? We already talked a bit about time travel, but
well,
what
time
other type of
traveling, yeah. I feel like and a lot of the things I say probably sound a little crazy, but I do think that teleportation is real. Okay, you got to think a lot of the technologies and stuff that they're just now coming out with, they've had for 50 years, 100 years. You know, we're just now starting to see it. I do believe Star Wars, Star Trek, all of this stuff, there's predictive programming in that. There was a whole move from the 60s and the 70s to get everybody on board with aliens and alien movies and space travel for this reason, because they wanted it to become normalized and accepted. Now, I do think that we're going to see more unveilings of more like alien-derived travel tech, so teleportation. I think that's a lot of Pluto and Aquarius. I also feel like that Saturn-Neptune conjunction can actually reboot the way that we look at international travel. So I think we're going to have better instant travel kind of like systems. So we might hear that there's travel pods that are being developed. We're also probably going to hear about new technology that's going to be showing us how we can get from point A to point B in a flash. And some people are going to be like, how is that possible? You know, we're used to getting on a plane and going from one country to another, and it takes, 12 hours with layovers. I think we're going to be hearing about things where we can go much, much, much faster. And it's not going to be on a train or on a plane. So it's going to be like teleportation, I think.
Wow. And it's like an interesting theme that's kind of coming up in all of this stuff, from the time travel to the physical travel to, new technologies and all of these things. It's this interesting kind of through line that is like, is this going to happen through technology, or is this going to happen through like consciousness? Because that's the other ways that are we going to do travel? Is it going to be a pod where you stay in one spot, but your consciousness goes somewhere? So I wonder, do you see, or these things like connected and mirroring each other as technology advances, consciousness advances?
I definitely think there's a connection between the two. There's been a shift to kind of have this more, like reality that has been augmented the last couple of years. And whether it's like the Apple glasses, or it's been people who have been encouraged to have these virtual reality games. Don't go out, don't travel. Why? You can just, explore places, in a 3D fashion online, and you can do tours. But recently they have been doing studies where they have been taking prisoners, and they have been experimenting with the potential of doing this highly immersive experience where they're almost like put under, and they're wearing goggles where they go through the experience, where they experience the crime that they committed. They also experience a very condensed, what would feel like several years of serving their crime. And how that impacts them psychologically, how it impacts the brain, how they react and then process and like have empathy, hoping that they can expedite the process of what would be a very long prison sentence, and learning from that into something that could be in a matter of weeks. Obviously, not a lot of people are hearing about this, but this is very Pisces. Pisces is prisons, and Neptune can be about screens. So I do think that this is going to be a move to try and encourage people to have some of these experiences. So there's going to be new technologies where you can go places and do things. But I also, on the flip side, kind of wonder, is that going to fracture our reality so much that we can't tell what's real any longer? Or are we going to have some of these experiences where then people are suddenly like, well, I don't want to go and travel and visit the pyramids. Why? I can just sit on my lazy boy and do it at home. Are we becoming more accustomed to not experiencing the real world? And I think that that's something we all can kind of admit collectively we've been doing. We live in a life right now where we have immediate gratification. Our food's delivered, our packages are delivered. We can meet people online. We don't have to socialize. We can just hop on, the computer. I don't know. I'm on the fence about it, because I could see the benefits, but I also am kind of concerned about, if people don't start having real experiences, we're going to lose that side of ourselves that are human.
Wow, that prisoner thing is literally Clockwork Orange. It's exactly the premise of that movie, which, the book is written in like the 60s and the movie came out in the 70s, I believe. It's supposed to take place in the future. And there's so many things in that movie that are aligned with where we're at right now. So now you to say that is like, this was like some type of premonition. And so another thing too, like on that topic, is kind of the relationships, right? Like people kind of having AI relationships and things like that. It's kind of going in that same direction of people not wanting to experience real life and then wanting to experience this, augmented life.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I mean, when you think about it, since the internet, right? I mean, now we have been connecting and meeting people online. So maybe it started in the 90s with chat rooms. Now we are in the 2020s, and we're talking to AI partners or assistants or like whatever. I think that I can see where for some people it can be beneficial in enhancing social skills. So if you're somebody who is wanting to get back out there and start dating, or if you're somebody who is wanting to learn how to have better conversations, or maybe you're wanting to communicate with something because for whatever reason you're unable to go and socialize, sure, there's a time and place for that. But I also think that it's getting a little weird, right? Like when you remove the need to actually go into a space physically, put yourself out there, be yourself, be authentic, like that takes guts. Like that takes a little bit of like grit to do that. And you know, at what point does this start to not only impact us as individuals, but also as a population? When it becomes much easier to just have a AI simulated partner, spouse, whatever, where we're not going to reproduce, we're also going to see an erosion of some of the pillars within society, which to some extent may not be for everybody, but it's like people get married, they have families, you know, we have communities. And is that going to stall us from being able to continue to evolve? I think that that's a huge concern. I mean, we're seeing decline in testosterone in young men. We're seeing major declines in plummeting of birth rates across the globe. This is not just happening in specific countries, it's everywhere. And I feel like that's something that we kind of need to talk about. Like, I mean, it's getting weird. I mean, I live in a small town in Texas, but I'm part of like a local group, and I'm seeing people who are like posting, being like, hey, you know, if you're single and you're wanting to meet somebody, put these certain items in your cart and be at the supermarket between, you know, 5 and 8 p.m. And like, that's how you know somebody's interested. Like, we're here now because even though we can connect in so many ways and we can also have artificial relationships, people are craving real connection. They really are. They're craving it. And I think that, you know, whether it's social anxiety or people who are having other issues with being able to kind of connect, it's kind of a scary place to be if we're going down that road where we're going to be further, I think, immersing ourselves in this artificial reality. You know, we've got filters, we've got people who are modifying their bodies online. We really for decades now, this has been going on. So people are also so disconnected from what it means to be real, that I think that's also part of it. And that's why I'm excited for Saturn-Neptune to go into Aries. I think authenticity, rawness, real faces, real bodies, also people who are going to be showing their battle war, you know, war scars, whether it's, you know, acne or if it's just anything that makes them real, that is what's going to be celebrated over the next couple of years.
So, a lot of astrologers are predicting some war and things like that. So, what is your opinion on that? And also, like, how is that changing with all of these transits? Like, how is war and things like that going to look different in the coming years?
So, I mean, it's going to be that I think to some extent, just saying that open-ended and not saying where or how is a little, it's going to put people, you know, kind of on edge. Aries is the sign that deals with war. It's connected to Mars. So it's about cuts and blades and heat and all that stuff. And obviously Pluto in Aquarius has been showing us where we're actually seeing lasers. There are things that are being set off from lasers that are creating fires. I'll just leave it at that, or creating weird catastrophic events that's being disguised as maybe natural. I think a lot of people are saying this because on one hand, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, if we go back and we look at what has happened throughout history, it's always been a time where we either saw boundaries kind of broken down and kind of like dismantled. So for example, in '89, when we had in Capricorn, the fall of the Berlin Wall, a complete reorganization of what was kind of going on in Eastern Europe. This time around in Aries, I think it's going to be about us becoming aware of new weapons of war. Right. So going back to the last time we had this conjunction, thousands of years ago during the Bronze Age, this is when we started seeing the first developments of, you know, bronze and metal, which led to us having, you know, shields and all kinds of things that was used in war, and also the development of war tactics, which we're still using in some modern day military, you know, to this day. Anyway, so they're saying this because two things: the opposition that's setting up now, which can be saying there's threats of war. We've been seeing this kind of standoff with threats with nuclear, you know, weapons, at least in the Middle East, which that's nothing new. It's always kind of going on. But Saturn and Neptune in Aries is going to be talking about, yeah, there's going to be a new art of war that's going to be kind of playing out. So deceptive weapons is very Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. It's also going to be, I think, about illusions. So cloaked drones, right? I think is something we're going to be hearing about. I think we're also going to be hearing about how maybe past wars were, the way that we have learned about them historically is not accurate, which can create some tension in, current, society within certain countries as well. I think the art of war is changing. I think it's been changing. I think that I have the perspective that we've kind of been at war, and the war isn't necessarily with each other. The war is for our minds, for what we're going to believe in, what we're going to, kind of get involved in. And I think a lot of it's been the psyops and stuff that's been happening in recent years. I know that the United States is coming into, in their chart, the next couple of years, the Uranus return, which if you go back in time, the last time we had it was World War II, which we definitely got involved in this global war. And there's still all kinds of bits and pieces of that war that we're now realizing was not totally factual. And then before that was the US Revolution. So that transit always corresponds with us having conflict with other people and their distribution or reworking of our allies. First, it was leaving, Britain, and then, World War II, it was us aligning ourselves with, New World Axis powers. So this time around, I think that, we will see some kind of war conflict. There's kind of chit chat kind of going on right now on X about some brewing tension that's supposedly going to be happening in mid-May. I don't know. I don't know if it's true. I'm not going to speak on that, but there are several people that are kind of speculating. I think it was Stu Peters who said it first, that there's going to be like a real war issue that's going to happen in Europe. But I think that if there is going to be something that's going to be going on, we're actually going to see more tension next year with the Saturn-Neptune connection in Aries. I also think that we're going to be seeing something closer to 2030, that there's going to be some tension going on there.
Okay, so one thing that has been prophesized for many, many years and continues to come up, and all different channelers, different people are talking about the alien disclosure that is coming. Some people are saying it's now. Some people are saying it's 2027, 2028, 2030, 2032. What are you seeing connected to aliens?
So what's interesting is a lot of people think Aquarius is aliens. It's not. It's Neptune. It's Pisces. So I have the belief that there are tons of different dimensions. There are so many things going on that we do not see, that I believe our perception of aliens and these little green men in the sky and what's really going on are two different things. I think that aliens are around. I think they've been around. I think the disclosure is partly tied to this incoming Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I think that we're actually going to learn more about the fact that aliens, they've been here. I think they're in the ocean. I think they're coming and going from the ocean, or they're coming and going from the center of the earth, or there's something going on where they're having access to things that we do not have access or awareness of as a collective. I also feel like that's going to rock, rattle, and roll a lot of what we have been told, especially from more traditional structured religious, believers, right? Who believe in their religious root theories. So that's going to disrupt everything. And I think that, if you've been following some of the stuff that's been going on, with the Vatican and some of the information and the records that they have, I think they've known. And I think that they have not wanted this to get out, because it's going to have all of us questioning, what the heck, our origins, where do we come from? Where do we fit into this? And I'm excited, because I do think that the disclosure is coming. And I think that we are going to see this probably over the next 3 years. There's been a push going on the last year or so. They were having congressional meetings and stuff talking about how they needed to come out. I think it was Lazar who was coming out saying, we need to talk about this, because if we don't talk about this, then it's going to be this staged alien invasion, Blue Beam, Project Blue Beam, where things are being projected into the sky. It's going to look like we're being, attacked. It's going to look like something out of, Independence Day, which is then going to be another psyop that's going to scare people into not wanting to leave their home and just stay inside, trust your government. So I think this information needs to come out. I think there's enough whistleblowers and people who are not only wanting this information out to ensure that the public doesn't freak out, but also that's directly tied to some of these technologies that can literally free the human race. So whether you call it reverse engineering crafts or whatever it is, there's stuff out there that they know that they don't want us to know. And I think it's getting to a point where people are asking too many questions, and they're gonna have to give us something.
It's interesting because it keeps coming back to this same theme of kind of, is it going to be technology or is it going to be consciousness? And when it comes to aliens, that's kind of, I think the big debate that's happening is up until this time in history, people think it's an advanced technology. And now these newer whistleblowers are saying it's interdimensional. It's here. It's outside of our visible spectrum. They've been here the whole time. Some people are saying they're from here and we just haven't been able to perceive them. So is there anything, related to kind of this like battle between consciousness and technology, physical and non-physical? Because it's so interesting that all of these topics have that through line for everything that's coming up now.
Well, I mean, if you follow like, Harari and like some of these, tech people talking about, well, in the future, we won't need humans, humans will be replaced. And we also won't need to believe in God, or, we're not going to need doctors or nurses or anything because we're going to have AI, and AI is just going to, tell everybody everything. And we're going to have this new thing that we're going to believe in. It's going to become our new God. I mean, I don't know. I think that my concern is about where the technology takes over to the point where it's, I mean, they're even saying it's becoming like sentient. Like once that happens and we don't have any influence or control and we're utilizing these technologies, how is this going to be influencing us, right? In the future, at least. I don't know. That's just something that I keep thinking about. But moving forward, I feel like the only way that we're going to be able to differentiate like what's real and what's not real is through disclosure. So we're going to have to be able to know where some of this is coming from, what is actually kind of connected to aliens, and what's actually something that's being like man-made and driven that's intentionally trying to kind of control or at least influence like the population.
It's such a pleasure to get to pick your brain on all of these topics because like you said, you like leave little breadcrumbs in your videos. Sometimes you'll say stuff and I'm like, I think she's into aliens. But as far as your regular content and your readings and your offerings, you have a lot of courses and stuff. So can you tell us a little bit? I mean, if you look at for booking with you, you have so many different types of readings. So you're so talented at what you do. As you know, I know people who've done readings with you. They loved it, got so much out of it. So can you tell us a little bit about, your day-to-day stuff that you offer?
Sure. So I'm a Western astrologer. That's what I practice by trade. I do unique combination of looking at the astrological transits, but also I'm like clairsentient, clairvoyant. So I can kind of have downloads. I'll see stuff. I'll be talking about specific signs and things to watch for. And I also incorporate tarot into my readings as well. So I have clients that come to me who've never had a reading before that want to read their natal chart. So they want to look at the astrology aspects of the day they were born. I call this like your karmic contract. So I'm just the person who's here just to remind you what you agreed to, what you signed up for, and what the terms and conditions were. Just to understand who you are, where your strengths and your weaknesses might be, what the blueprint is for what you could or should be doing for a living, what your relationships look like, what your money situation looks like, what your maybe your health stuff looks like. And then we take it a step further and we look at transits. So that's kind of looking at how the planets are moving in the sky. We use this as a predictive method. So if you're wanting to ask, an astrologer, when am I going to get married? When am I going to find a job? When am I supposed to be moving? When am I going to start a family? These kinds of things can be seen through a transit reading. And we look at the current skies now, some of the cycles that we're in, retrogrades, eclipses. And we also look at sometimes like a progress chart, which evolves over time. And it's like a technique that we see just to see what kind of time periods and cycles that you're in, so we can kind of better guide you. Most of my sessions, generally, I can sit down and talk to you about what's going to happen over the next year. And I'll go in depth and talk about, okay, this time period, this is going to happen. This is when you want to be preparing for that. But I also do other cool things. Like I help people pick election dates. So if they know they want to launch a book or a business, or maybe they want to get married, or maybe they want to, make a cosmetic change, or get a medical procedure, we can look at the dates that are going to be best for your chart and kind of talk about that as well. And I also offer synastry readings or relationship readings. So people who are in committed relationships that just want to better understand their partner, understand the cycles that they're in, how to better their relationship and kind of enhance communication. or any relationship matter, to better understand each other and see where you guys can work as a team, and what is likely to kind of unfold with the relationship astrology as well.
And what about some of your courses? Because you have a lot of courses that you offer. And as I watch your videos, I feel like you always have something new and fresh coming out. So can you tell us about some of the ones that you're offering right now?
So the last couple of years, I've been starting to kind of build out my course library. I taught a Astro 101 course. So that's basically beginners crash course. It's over 18 hours of study at your own pace. I teach you all about the signs, the houses, the aspects, how to read a natal chart. And then the second level is Astro 201. So by the end of that course, which is also about 17, 18 hours long, you should be able to predict. So you can use my techniques where you can look at where the planets are. I talk about software, also how to look at certain cycles and tell when is a good time to, maybe be moving or investing, or what might come from certain transits in the chart. And also how to create an annual horoscope. So I can literally teach the students, okay, how to plan your year ahead. We look at the solar return birthday reading. We also look at the transits and the retrogrades and the eclipses for the year, and use certain other kind of predictive methods. So that way you can do it for yourself, you can do it for your friends. And we're hoping to have like a 301 soon, because I would like to be taking it a step further and helping people really develop their own practice, because I've been doing this for myself now for 12 years. So I feel like I have a lot of experience under my belt at this point, not just with like tarot and astrology, but also I want to start teaching people how to start their own astrology business. My husband, we're kind of like a two-person team. My husband, Blake, does all the media and all of that stuff. So I feel like we could have a good brainstorm session and kind of figure out how to do that. And I also teach tarot. I have a tarot 101 course for people who want to learn how to read tarot as well. And we have like synastry courses, and every now and then I'll have like webinars and stuff. The latest thing I'm actually working on right now is I'm putting together a Saturn return boot camp for people who are like 27 to 30 years old, who are coming up on their Saturn return, to kind of help them navigate some of these transits with ease, and give them lots of like insight and kind of like a swift kick to get going with that transit, because it's a really big turning point in their life.
Wow, that's such an awesome offering, because usually when it comes to Saturn return, everybody's like, well, good luck. It's going to kick your ass.
It definitely does, but there's a lot of good things that come from it. So I'm excited, because I feel like especially this bunch, the ones who are going through it the first time, maybe the people who are going through it in their late 50s, they're kind of like veterans at this point. But definitely these kids with Saturn and Neptune transiting at the same time, it's really important to inspire them. It's really important for them to feel empowered, because this is going to be a group of individuals that are going to be very important for some of the next couple of years ahead. So we need to kind of get them ready. We need to have them confident in some of the things that they're going to be doing.
Candace, thank you so much for all of these, finally getting to get into these breadcrumbs of the things I've been hearing you say. And also too, like anybody watching who has not checked out your stuff, like every single video that you do is almost like a personal reading. It is the most thorough any content on the internet about astrology. And what I love too is that you actually show it on the screen versus like, a lot of people just kind of say what's coming up in a kind of more general way. You really show it on the screen. So it like helps people to really like get the information in and to understand what this means with this transit coming up, or what these changes are coming up. So I so appreciate you and your work, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Ultra Minds with JK Ultra, where every Thursday we come out with a new interviewing some of the greatest minds in spirituality, consciousness, aliens, conspiracies, astrology, and so much more. And make sure you check out my Tuesday Night Live every Tuesday night, where I do a live stream and we do a Q&A, and we go a deep dive into topics like the simulation theory, shadow work, spiritual bypassing, spiritual gurus turned cult leaders, aliens, my own experiences, and so much more. So make sure you subscribe, put on notifications, and if you would like to support my work, you can also become a subscriber to my Substack, which is $11 a month at jennifercarmody.substack.com. And once a month for our paid subscribers, we do a live event where we do a group hypnosis, a group meditation, or a group manifestation exercise. And thank you so much. Make sure that you subscribe, comment, do all the things, all the YouTube stuff.